Alright guys, welcome back to part 3 of the video. So if you haven't watched parts 1 and 2 of the mindset, psychology and mental framework videos, then please go ahead and watch those because they are very important. They serve as a foundation or a foundational segue into today's video, which is part 3. Now, I just want to talk about my own journey. When I first started trading, I never really had a mental framework. I never really appreciated the mindset and the importance of the way our brain works and how our emotions can impact the way that we trade. And it wasn't until 2021 that I started really working on this area, having watched a few videos. People think of the mindset and the psychology and risk management as boring aspects of trading. They are, but once you come to appreciate them, you realize the power and how essential they are as facets of your trading. I've come to the point in my 9-year career now where over the last 3-4 years, I've really heavily emphasized on the mindset and the mental aspect. Technically, I believe I have an edge, but what's been holding me back all those years in the past has been my mental edge. Me, myself, I am my own edge. You are your own edge, ultimately. And there are various forms of edges: technical, mental, emotional. All of your edges have to be working collectively for you to make it in this game. Now, in front of you is a video that I'd just like you to focus on. Look at what the inchworm is doing. Now, I just want to pause the video here. And if you've never seen the way an inchworm moves, it starts by stretching its body straight, anchoring the front feet, and then lifting up from the back end. It then bends at the middle to bring the two ends closer together, anchoring the back feet, and then stretching its body straight again to take another step forward. And if you look at the inchworm, it looks like a bell curve that moves. The inchworm concept is a concept that I've picked up from Jared Tendler, from his fantastic book, The Mental Game of Trading. I highly recommend this book because I've read many books when it comes to trading, particularly around the aspects of developing the mindset. However, what Jared does is he gives you a practical approach to work with your emotions and to understand who you are as a trader and how to improve yourself moving forward. And so this is why one of the reasons I've adopted this approach in my own trading, and one that I would like to share with you. When you think about the inchworm or the inchworm concept, think of a bell curve that continuously moves forward. As a trader, that's what you want to be doing, is moving forward, removing the weaknesses from your game and going forward with your strengths. The only thing that's holding you back are your weaknesses. So you need to be aware of your weaknesses to allow your strength to pull you forward. All right, so we've understood that an inchworm, or the inchworm concept, is essentially a bell curve that moves forward, right? So when you think about this, this is who you are as a trader. This is everything about you. Your current skill set, your experience, your emotions, every single facet of your trading and your performance over the last 6 to 12 months can be captured or plotted on a distribution curve, also known as a bell curve. Your A game is you at your best. It's not very often, but when you do enter your A game, this is where your biggest wins are. And the flip side of that is your C game. This is you at your worst. Your emotions are all over the place. Your technical skill sets are not really actioned as they should be. And therefore, you're experiencing significant losses. Every once in a while, you take that massive loss, which puts a fairly big dent in your account, right? Instead of a minus 1 hour trade, or a 5 to 10% loss, you've just been slapped across the face with a 20% loss. And you really feel that because those fucking hurt. I've been there. And they can really, really mentally fuck with your mind. And the majority of the time is this constant battle with yourself where you're grinding, you're churning your accounts, you're taking small losses, you're taking small wins, but it's a constant battle between your A game and your C game. But there's some level of consistency. If you rated your trade decisions over the last 6 to 12 months on a scale from 1 to 100, you'd see them or you'd see a natural distribution very similar to a bell curve, which highlights both your strong moments and your weaker moments. And ultimately, all you need to think about is that this range defines who you are as a trader, your current ability. There's a floor to how bad you are, and equally there's a ceiling to how good you are as a trader. And every single trade you make operates within this zone. And how you operate in this zone is based upon your skills and experience. Now, as an experienced trader, I can tell you that my worst decisions today, okay, my C game of today is far better, significantly better than my C game from 4 or 5 years ago. And so ultimately, this is who you are as a trader. Your A game is who you are at your best today. Your B game is your mediocre game, and your C game is your worst game. And so if you're aware of your strengths and you want to move forward, you can't, because your weaknesses are holding you back. So what do you need to do? You need to show a level of self-awareness. You need to understand your emotions. You need to understand the mental weaknesses that are holding you back. But equally, you need to be aware of your strengths that will allow you to move forward. And so the whole purpose of this framework or of this model is that eventually, in 6 months' time, your current A game will replace your B game, and your B game will replace your C game, and the C game falls off the bell curve. Now you've shifted forward with a new A game, a new B game, and a new C game. So simply put, your old A game becomes your B game, your old B game becomes your old C game, and the C game falls off. So if you think of the inchworm concept, how the inchworm uses its front feet, pulls the back of its body up, arches into a bell curve, and moves forward, and the old C game falls off. That's exactly the mindset that you want to have in terms of, right, over the next 6 months, I need to move forward. What are my current weaknesses? What are my current strengths? And so growth gradually happens. As your range shifts over time, you will refine your decision-making process. Now, in my opinion, in order to move forward, we really need to think about not just adopting our game in the shape of a bell curve, but really thinking about tails. Now, tails refer to two ends of a probability distribution, left tail events and right tail events. Left tail events are essentially severe outcomes, and right tail events are the most positive outcomes. Now, tail risk refers to left tail events, negative events that generate large losses. And equally on the right-hand side. Now, tail events are rare, but nevertheless more common than what is described by a normal Gaussian bell curve. In fact, it turns out that fatter or more frequent tails occur than what we expect. And that's no different when it comes to trading. So, fat tails, also known as heavy tails, indicate that a distribution has a higher probability of extreme outcomes than a normal distribution. And if you really think about that from a trading perspective, how often do we see people in a bull market, especially in the crypto space, run their accounts up, and the minute there's a downturn in the entire market in terms of context or a deleveraging event, people are actually blowing their accounts up. And so really the ideal model, if you think about it, is that you really want to minimize your C game, okay? To be very, very minimal. Essentially, you want to have some form of a normal bell curve, but that's skewed positively, okay? So this contains more of your A game. This is your B game, but you can see the mean, the median, and the mode are all skewed positively here in this instance. This is the ideal curve that you want from a performance perspective. You want to have more of your A game. This is your B game here, and then you've got a very, very thin tail. I hope so far that you've understood the inchworm concept, how we can also measure our game as a bell curve, and the ideal types of bell curve that we wish to have. Not only understanding the bell curve, but how our game of trading fits within the bell curves. Primarily our A game, B game, and C game. So the next question is, how is any of this actually practical? What do we do with the information that's been presented? Well, we have what is known as your tactical game. This is your technical analysis. This is discretionary to you. This is everything that you've probably learned about price action, whether it's order flow, Elliott waves, whatever it is from a technical perspective. And then the aspect of the mental game, an area that you've not really focused upon, but hopefully we can change that by adopting this model. And so what you want to really do is think about your A game. Who are you and what does it mean to be at your A game from a mental perspective? You're confident, you're relaxed, you're patient with a purpose. Whereas your C game is that you're very distracted. You're distracted by the news, you're distracted by what other traders are sharing or what people are shitposting online. You're emotionally on edge. Why are you emotionally on edge when it comes to trading? When you're looking to pull the trigger, maybe when you're in the trade, right? Maybe you're trading your P&L. So all of these emotions are heightened during trade execution and whilst you're managing the trades. So I'll repeat that. These emotions are heightened during pulling the trigger, where you need to execute the trade, and when you're managing the trade. This is when your emotions are at their peak or they're peaking, and they kind of take over your mindset. And you have to recognize that. And this is where I keep talking about this level of self-awareness is so important, that you understand and you're aware of what your emotions are telling you and how it can override your decision-making process. And then you have your technical game, which is, do you have a clear understanding of the context? Are you aware of the execution trigger? Do you know the level at which you want to do business? Why? What do you need to see? Where do you want to execute? Are you aware of your position sizing ahead of time? Okay. Are you letting price come to you? That ties in with having patience with a purpose. And then the worst side of your technical game could be something like trading from a mobile phone impulsively, copying other traders, taking large losses because you've got this level of fear or greed that stops you from taking profit at logical levels, and then it impacts your trading. And so to give you more examples, here's an example of the mental game. Very relaxed, decisive, patient, confident, trusting your gut. Your B game, overthinking, attention on wrong market. And so losing focus, missing obvious trades, looking at P&L, you're reacting too slow at certain levels. When price comes into that level where you wanted to buy, now you've frozen. You don't have the ability to pull that trigger. Why is that? What emotions were you experiencing? Why do you think that's happening? And then your C game, this is you at your worst. You're distracted, you're risk averse, you're hesitating, you've got no patience when it comes to trading, you're trading impulsively, you're doubting yourself, and you're constantly watching your P&L. And then when you look at the tactical game, again, you can read these yourselves, but your A game is you have a clear understanding of the context. You're letting price come to your level. You're seeing trap traders. You know your strategy inside out, and you know what it takes to execute that strategy. Whereas your C game, you keep chasing price because you've missed your entry. You're making impulsive decisions. Again, so many of you trade off a mobile phone. Delete the app from your phone and have it on read only. Now, as part of one of the exercises that I would like you to do is don't overwhelm yourself when it comes to this. This will gradually grow over time. What you want to do is just focus on 5 aspects of your technical game. Okay, for each A, B, and C, and then 5 aspects of your mental game. Now, to make your life easier, what I've done is laid out some examples of what it means to be at your A game, B game, and C game from a mental perspective. So when it comes to implementing those frameworks, be sure to come back to this screen and reflect upon some of the examples, or maybe come up with your own. It's better if you can improvise and really understand yourself. Just don't copy this blindly. Really think about 5 key points, 5 key strengths and 5 key weaknesses. And then in the middle of that is your B game. And then there's the tactical game characteristics. Feel free to pause the screen and read through the lists of A, B, and C game from a technical perspective, and then improvise your own. Just pick 5. Okay, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to list every single A game, B game, C game bullet point that you can think of. By no means is this list exhaustive, but it's just to give you some level of direction. Now that you have an understanding of your mental game and technical skill game, ranging from A to C, how can this be applied to your trading? So what we've done so far is essentially highlight our A game, our B game, and our C game. And tactically, our A game, B game, and C game. This is about being present, being mindful, having a level of self-awareness, understanding who we are as traders, understanding our motivations. This is that level of the mental game of trading that you need to improve. But then all of this has to be applied on a trade. How do we then move this across into our game? This is where we have an actionable mental framework. So not just a mental framework, but an actionable mental framework. You should now know that in trading, there are 2 halves to the game. There's a mental game, and then there's a tactical game. And therefore, every game is composed of 2 parts, an outer game and an inner game. The outer game is played against an external opponent to overcome external obstacles and to reach an external goal. And in this instance, your technical skill set on the market is the outer game. The inner game is the game that takes place in your mind. That's the mind of the player, whether you're a sports professional, whether you're a boxer, whether you're a trader. And that is played to overcome all the habits of the mind that inhibit excellence in performance. So the actionable framework that I've incorporated is actually very straightforward. It's known as the performance process. And this is a model that I've incorporated into my trading from the book Mastering the Mental Game of Trading by Stephen Goldstein. And these are the 2 books that I highly recommend to really think about a practical solution to the mental game of trading. In terms of the performance process, there are 4 quadrants to where each quadrant represents a crucial stage in the trade lifecycle. So we begin at the bottom here, at the reset phase, and this is known as the being phase. Then we have a trigger. Now don't confuse the word trigger as in trade execution or trigger to enter a trade. We'll discuss this later. So then we enter the production phase, and then we act. This is the actual act of execution, entering the trade. This is our performance phase, and eventually at the end of the trade, we reach an outcome into what is known as the letting go phase. All right, moving on to the 4 phases. First of all, you have the being phase. The being phase emphasizes self-awareness and mental preparation. Traders focus on achieving an optimal state. This is where we can think of it of like being in the zone, being in your flow state, mentally, physically, and to some extent spiritually, to engage effectively with the uncertainty and risks of trading. Then you've got the performance phase, okay? In this phase, traders analyze and plan and strategize their trades. It involves a thorough preparation, including understanding market conditions and developing a sound trading plan before taking risks. Now, this ties in quite nicely with the next section of the course, because what we will be talking about, or what we will be covering, is routine and goal setting. So you've got to have like a pre-trade condition, a morning checklist. This kind of helps you with getting yourself in that being phase and then into that production phase. You're planning your trades for the day ahead. You're aware of what the news is. Is there a CPI? Is there a FOMC? Should you be perhaps waiting for those events to pass before you take a trade? And then the most important part, once you've got yourself in the zone and you've planned ahead for the day, you've strategized, you know which levels you're looking to trade, is the act. This is where you're looking to either execute the trade and then managing the trade And eventually, from managing the trade, three things will happen. You'll either start taking partial profits and closing the trade out for a win. Number two, you'll probably get out at break even. And the final outcome is that you get stopped out for a loss. This performance phase is a phase which represents active engagement with the markets. It's where you're executing your strategies. It's where you're managing your trades. It's where you're navigating your risk and where your risk management comes into play. But what it also does is, if you think about the inchworm concept, where you've got your A, B, and C games, you are now also bringing in your mental game and your tactical game all into this performance phase. This is it. This is what's going to define you as to how successful you will be as a trader. But notice how there's a precondition before you can even get to this phase. And that's the being phase, the production phase, being mentally aware, being tactically aware, bringing it all together in the performance phase. This, for me, is being in the zone. And then after that, there's a letting go phase. The final phase, you have to have a release. You've got to mentally disengage from the market, from your trade. Whatever emotional baggage you have to let go. And by accepting the results, whether it's positive or negative, you have to reset for future opportunities. Because if you don't, you are then bringing all that emotional baggage that you've just experienced from this trade in itself, whether it's overconfidence because you've just hit a massive 5-hour trade. Are you now going to bring that emotion of overconfidence into your next trade and size up? Thinking, yeah, I'm in the zone today. Let me really fucking size up. Or is this your third loss of the day? And now you're hesitant and fearful on the next trade that you're probably going to risk half size. This is why it's important to let go and repeat your process that you've established. And this is why, if you've watched videos 1 and 2, we've talked about the failures of a trader. We've talked about the emotional aspects of a trader. We've talked about some of the emotional tendencies like overconfidence, greed, fear is what creeps into your game. Are you going to let that come into your next trade? Or do you want to enter the next trade being fully present, ready to move on to the next opportunity? This is a mindset that you need to have. Let's talk about a practical example of this. Imagine you're a football team, a soccer team in the Premier League. Your being phase is when you are collectively together in the locker room, in the changing room. You're thinking about the game ahead. The manager's talking to you. You've got the production phase. You go over the tactics. You go over the plan. You go over your strategy. Each player knows what they're looking to do. And before the match starts, what happens? The players go out onto the pitch. They warm up. They're in the arena. They're getting mentally ready and physically ready for what? The performance phase. That 90 minutes of football. Same with a boxer. He's in the locker room with his coach. He's mentally talking to himself. He's getting into that zone. You see it with the UFC fighters in the locker room. They're getting in the zone, mentally preparing, doing some bag work, doing some drills, talking to their coaches, shadow boxing. This is what it means to be in that being phase. And then you're planning, you're strategizing by doing your shadow boxing. And then comes a moment when you enter the arena, you enter the ring, you enter the cage. That's the performance phase. That's where everything you've prepared for, both mentally and physically, come into that execution, come into your game plan. How you manage yourself in that ring, how you're looking to avoid any downside risk. And then at the end of the fight or at the end of the match, you have a debriefing. You have to emotionally let go because you've got the next fight or you've got the next game. And if you carry any trauma or baggage or overconfidence into that next game, into that next fight, into that next trade, then it's going to be your downfall. And so for me, this is why I can relate to this. It's such a fantastic, powerful mental approach to adopt to your game of trading. Combining this with the inchworm concept of your A to C game mentally and tactically, you now have a trade life cycle that you can adopt as a framework to trading this market. So when we think of what we've just covered and we envisage this as a wave, The performance process cycle can also be expressed as a wave, whereby the upper half of the wave contains the production and performance phases, where the trader more directly interacts with the market. So this is where you want to be at the start, in your being phase, okay? Your trigger is planning for trades ahead for the day or the week. Then you're in the production phase, okay? That's where you're strategizing, analyzing, looking at the levels you want to trade. What do you need to see? Where do you need to see? How are you looking to execute the trade? And then acting upon that. That's your trade execution, where you're managing the trade. Are you going to puke it for a quick win because you don't have any balls to hold the trade? Because it's not, you don't have a process, you don't have a plan? Or is greed going to take over? And when such that price trades towards your target, you refuse to take profit, and at the end of the day, guess what? It's come back against you, and you've taken a significant loss. And then you finish up on the letting go phase. We've talked about this, the releasing the emotions and coming to terms with dealing with the outcomes. Each one of these is so important. If you want to be at that top level, you have to make sure that you're ticking the boxes for each one of these phases at 100%. Any less, if you bring your B game to any of these phases, you're not going to make it. And neither am I. The level that I want to get to in the next 2, 3, 4 years, I have a clear plan of where I want to go and where I want to be. I know what I need to do to get there. It's a gradual process. I'm not looking to become a shit-hot 8-figure trader who's pushing significant size in the next 6 months. That for me is a long-term goal. But you have to be true to yourself. You have to give and dedicate 100% focus and dedication and being aware in each and every single phase. Do that and you'll have much more better direction and progress in your trading career. So now that we've understood the trade cycle as a wave, let's look at what that means now to have a consecutive series of waves. You can see that the wave format allows you to see the continuous nature of the performance process cycle, whereby it can be viewed as a series of waves, with each healthy completion of the cycle leading to the next wave. This is what you want to achieve. Reset, being, production, performance, letting go, reset, okay? This is what you want to strive towards. Well, what happens if you don't? And if you don't, you'll enter what is known as a trader's death spiral. It's in this phase where you see an erosion of your account. You have no control of your emotions. Now your ego is taken over. Now your impulsive emotions are taken over. You've lost all accountability. You've let go of each and every phase. Because the fact is, you're now short-circuiting the entire process. You're acting, you're not resetting, you're not letting go, you're not going back into the being phase, you're not going back into the production phase, which is the planning and strategy. Instead, you're just impulsively looking at the chart and executing. We've all done it. I've done it. And I'm sure many of you still do it now when you're trading off a mobile phone. And so your failure to let go with no resetting, no planning, no production, your performance will decline. So I want you to stop and pause and just read this to yourself. This is understanding the trader's death spiral. You are effectively in that death spiral. Now let's go over a practical example of that. I'm not going to go and read this word for word, but in a nutshell, look, basically what happens is there's a guy called Eduardo. He acts, okay? He's done the reset, he's acted, but then he fails to let go. He fails to engage with the entire process. And then he acts again, and so forth. What does that mean for his P&L? Well, he can see where there's a sudden drop in his P&L, and eventually he carries on to the point where his insignificant drawdown. And this is a classic result of not having a process, not resetting, not going through the being phase, the production phase, the planning phase. Now, as traders, you have to understand that you're not going to change overnight. You're not going to change over 6 months. Recall the analogy that I made about becoming a boxer or a tennis player. If you have 6 weeks intensive tennis lessons or 6 weeks worth of intense boxing sessions twice a day, 3 hours a session, are you now ready to go in the ring and fight at that elite level? Well, trading, you are competing against some of the best traders in the world, some of the best algorithms out there. This is what you're up against. And if you start taking shortcuts in your process, in your mental game, then the outcome is not going to be the one that you dream of or that you desired. And you've only got yourself to blame for that. Now, as a trader, if you can relate to this from your past performances, where you've blown accounts, you've lost money, then I'm sure you have experienced the trader's death spiral. Now, what do you think would have happened if Eduardo, he failed to reset, but then later he managed to reset and went through the entire process? Do you think he would have had this horrendous drawdown on his account? Well, let's have a look at an example. And this is what I'm referring to. That occasionally, as traders, we may fail to follow a process. But by being self-aware, you have to bring yourself back on track again. And in this instance, where Eduardo fails to let go, he acts and then he resets. Well, that's been reflected in his performance. You can see the drop off in his performance, but he manages to recover, and his P&L recovers as a result of his process. It's that key aspect of letting go and coming to terms with your trade that will allow you to move on to the next trade with a level of clarity, a process, a system that you've devised, understanding your expectancy, still being able to think in terms of uncertainty, appreciating randomness, and having a level of objectivity. And so it's important to really appreciate the fourth quadrant, which is the art of letting go and resetting, because the market doesn't want you to let go. It will do everything to keep you trapped. It toys with you, it teases with you, it fucks with your head, it plays games with your mind, it messes with your emotions, it thinks that it can let you win, only to turn on you, break you, leave you penniless if it can. The market is ruthless, and it will crush anyone who isn't prepared. So you have to have an appreciation for physical and mental closure. You have to appreciate the danger of holding on to past trades, both emotionally and the baggage that carries. You have to appreciate the importance of letting go, rebalancing your mindset, your physical, your mental state after a trade. Figure out what that means. How do you best come to resetting? Is it going for a walk? Is it going for a gym session? Is it taking a break from the screen for the rest of the day? The art of letting go is one of your power zones. Let's take a summary of the framework that we've discussed today. So in the earlier part of this video, I spoke about the Inchworm concept and how when you think of a bell curve, the bell curve essentially captures your probable distribution of every facet of your trading. And the Inchworm concept is essentially a bell curve that moves forward. So the Inchworm concept allows you to think of your trading both mentally and tactically as three zones. That's your A game, your B game, and your C game. Maybe another way to think about it is three operating systems, right? You have your A game, which is your best performing system. Your B game is your mediocre average. It's not great, it's not the worst. And then you have your C game, which is your weakness of your system, the one that's holding you back, both tactically and mentally. And then we talked about how we can incorporate the aspects of the mental game and the tactical game. So the important factor here is to spend time to recognize your strengths and your weakness. What does it really mean when you're bringing your A game to the desk? What does it mean when you're bringing your C game to the desk? What does it mean when you're in the flow zone or the optimal trader state? What does it mean when you're in a state of tilt? What does it mean when you're when you are in a death spiral? I'm bringing all of that into then the performance process cycle or the trade life cycle, where you have the being phase, the trigger to start planning for the day ahead. Are you following your processes, your procedures, your routine? Are you aware of what you need to see before you even execute a trade? Why are you trading at that level? Is it a 4-hour supply zone? Is it because you see sellers trapped at the highs and you're likely to see a delta unwind, so therefore you're going to take the trade? Are you even aware of your risk management? Are you aware of your position sizing? Have you calculated that? Are you mentally prepared of how much you're willing to lose and to accept that loss and ensuring that it's not going to impact the next set of trades that you're going to take? Mentally being in the zone. And the performance phase is then acting upon that. Eventually, you'll come to an outcome. You've either made profit, you've stopped out for break even, or you've taken a loss. And then you reset. This is where you can reflect. Closure, acceptance of outcomes, both positive and negative, letting go, maybe exercising self-compassion, giving yourself a break, moving on. Journaling is another way of moving forward to get closure. So by combining the Inchworm concept with the performance process cycle, this is a framework that I use on a daily basis. And I can honestly say for me, I'm not sure about others out there, but it's had a profound effect on my own trading ability that I'm genuinely excited as to how I've progressed over the last 12, 18 months and where I'm looking to get to in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Now that we have understood the mental framework that I've discussed and covered today, let's talk about developing further. Now, I'm not going to read every single bullet point off the slide. It's up to you to pause the video or watch the video twice over and take some notes. But point number one, and the 6 points here that I want you to think about. Point number one is you need to have a level of mindfulness in trading. What does that mean? It basically means being aware of your mental state during each of the being phase, the production phase, the performance phase, and letting go and emotionally and mentally resetting. And then you have to understand your motivation. So if you recall, one of the first things that we did at the start of this course was that in our trading manual and trading journal, I asked you all, what's your motivation for trading? Why do you want to become a trader? What do you want from this game? How will you achieve that? So reflect on why you're trading every single day when you come to the desk and ensure that you're not straying away from your process. And ask yourself, do you want to be mindful and self-aware, or are you gambling with false hopes and dreams? So always stay aware of your motivations. Build awareness and emotional control. What does this mean? What does this mean? It means being present in the zone. Being aware of what the fuck you're actually doing. Keep your life simple. Get rid of all the bullshit out of your life and you'll succeed. Practice mindfulness and therefore reflect on your motivations. Are you trading with a purpose? Are you chasing losses? And like I said, the key aspect is train yourself to let go. If you can't train yourself to let go, you'll never progress. It's honestly as simple as that. It's not easy, but with practice and getting the reps in and having a level of awareness and purposefulness, you will see that. You will see those improvements. But you have to incorporate all of this and encapsulate it as part of your trading process. And then evolving as a trader. This is a key difference. You know, so many people trade. What does it mean to be a trader? You can get anybody, put them at a desk, get them to click some buttons, and they are what? They are effectively trading. But what does it mean to become a trader? There is a massive difference between starting out and thriving over the long term. So hopefully this video has given you an insight as to appreciating what trading is truly about. It's not just about technical skills, but dedicate a significant energy to your self-development as a trader. Be consistent in your approach, evolve and improve, and then balance your mental growth with your technical expertise to reach the top. So if you've dedicated the last 3-4 years of your trading career to the technical aspects, well, guess what? You need to dedicate just as much, if not more, to the mental aspects, because both go hand in hand. You can have a technical edge, but you won't be able to execute it. You can have a mental edge. You might come from a poker background with a phenomenal track record, but you won't be able to perform well in this game if you don't have a technical edge. So you really have to work on every single facet of your trading. And it's unfortunately the common mistake is we've all entered this space thinking that technical proficiency is what leads to the mastery of trading. The reality is it's not. It's both emotional and technical. So further resources that you can use. These are the 4 books that I've read at least twice. And these are the 4 that I've thoroughly enjoyed reading. So further resources. The AlphaMind YouTube channel I think is fantastic. I've made it a habit to watch 1 video a week. There's over 100 videos. And it's really, really is fantastic. It talks about all the aspects of how traders are performance athletes. how to evolve your mind, how to shape your trading future. Yeah, it's such a great website. And if you can get into the habit of thinking and approaching the markets in this way implicitly, you'll be so much better for it as a trader. And then you've got the Chat with Traders YouTube channel. I think there's some really fantastic podcasts there. This is something that I used to listen to all the time when I first started trading. And guess what? I used to skip the boring parts. I used to skip risk management. I used to skip the psychology or mindset. I was like, I'm not watching this. But now this is probably the aspect of trading that I enjoy the most, because your biggest edge is yourself. And sometimes when people say this, you don't quite understand or grasp what that means. But only until you understand that trading is not just about the technicals. It's about your emotions, regulating your emotions, the psychology of trading, the mindfulness of trading, and how trading really is to be classified as a professional sport. You want to trade at the top? You want to get to the top? Then you have to do what it takes to get to that level. So today's video is the last of the psychology and mindset videos. There are 3 parts to this. So parts 1 and 2 are the ones that you need to watch before watching this video. And then we're going to move on to routine and goal setting. Now, before I wrap up this section, I'd like to talk about my trading manual, which is part 2 of the Trader's Manual. A part 2 of the trading manual. So in part 1, we covered our strengths, weaknesses, motivations for trading. In part 2, we're going to talk about the mindset and the psychology. So after each segment, we're going to update the manual accordingly. Okay, so it's a working document for you guys to understand what it takes to have a trading manual. Now, before I move on to talking about the trading manual, what I would like to do is give you, just as maybe a level of inspiration, I'll show you some of the things that I've done. Now, I've created something called the Trading Mindset, which is mindset and psychological document, which complements my trading manual. And what this is a working, living document that evolves over time. And you can see there's a vast array of different headings. And a lot of this information is from various books, videos that I've collated and put together for my own reference. Now, I've actually printed this off, and I read this without fail at least once a month. Why do I do that? Because it reminds me of the importance of understanding the mental game of trading, having an appreciation, having a level of awareness. And if I stop reading this, then I find that the emotional tendencies or the flaws of trading start creeping back in again. And I highly recommend you to do something similar, to come up with a mental framework or a mental document. In fact, I've given you the mental framework that I use, but to complement that with a living document that's a constant reminder as to your purpose of this game, why you're in this game, and what it takes mentally and emotionally to perform at the highest level. So the trading manual. In part 1, we talked about the trader within, our mission statement, our motivations, our trading goals, our strengths, and our weaknesses. Part 2, this is subjective. This depends upon you, how much information you want to incorporate. But basically what this is at a high level is my mental framework. And not only is it my mental framework, it's complementary information about myself, to myself, that I can read again once a month when as part of my trading manual. So let's just go over some of these topics. My mental framework. Now here's an opening summary of my mental framework. My trading mental framework is built upon a combination of psychological resilience and structured mental processes designed to enhance my performance and consistency in the market. It integrates several key aspects that I have refined through research and self-reflection, creating a holistic approach to trading success. Now, I'm not going to give you the exact ins and outs because I really want you to think for yourself when it comes to developing a trading manual. Now, here's an example of my mental A to C game, right? The one that we covered in the slides earlier. Again, if you want to copy this, you can do, but ultimately you're not doing yourself any justice or any favors. The evolving the A to C game. Now, this is a note to myself. The key to improvement lies in applying the inchworm concept to this framework. Just as an inchworm moves forward by stretching its front while pulling up its back end, I aim to progress by advancing my A game while systematically addressing the weaknesses in my C game. By reducing errors and inefficiencies at the lower end of my performance spectrum, I create greater consistency and reliability in my trading outcomes. This process ensures that I am not only pushing my strengths forward, but also minimizing the impact of my weakest moments. Another excerpt is the performance process cycle, which you've all seen. And then the pages following this is the being phase, the production phase, the performance phase, the letting go phase. So they're my own summaries as to what each phase is. And then I'll move on. This I don't mind sharing. This is me in my optimal state, or my flow state. I wrote this as to what I believe is my flow state. If you want to pause and read this, you can do. I don't mind sharing this, but feel free to go ahead and do that. Now, this aspect is key. This is the pre-trade routine that I go through. This is part of the being phase. So number one, my mental preparation, cultivating my inner calm. Number two, having a positive attitude, embracing the process. I enjoy the process. I enjoy coming to the desk. I enjoy working through my sheets. I enjoy planning ahead, mapping out trades on the chart, getting into that mental zone. Number three, ego management. Practice a level of humility. I used to be very ego driven. Since early 2024, I've transformed the way I carry myself and conduct myself with my trading, in the way that I portray myself. The real me is coming out in my trading, what I strive to be, what I achieve to be, what I want to be. And then number four, preparation and routine, which we will cover in the next segment after psychology and mindset. And then the post-trade routine, which is the reflection and the growth. This is the letting go phase that I talked about. Immediate reflection is point number one. Number two, end of day review. Number three, weekend review. And then number four, resetting and recharging. Mental restoration for longevity in this game. You have to listen to your mind, listen to your body. Sometimes my best trading is when I've taken maybe a week off trading, complete down screen time. And I generally do that every 4 to 6 weeks. So this next sheet is trading mindset tracker sheet. This is very, very important. And this is one that I will leave you a link to download this. Now, I just want to reiterate the trading manual and my mental game of trading PDF document. Unfortunately, I'm not going to share that. I want you to come up with your own, put the work in, put the effort in. This is what I went through myself. And it's not going to serve you any purpose or any good if you're just going to copy and paste my work and apply it to yourself. It's not how it works. You really need to spend some time to develop your mental game. It's not going to happen overnight. You need to give it a good few months at the very least, and then watch how it can positively impact your game. But one of the things that I do want to give you is this trading mind sheet tracker. So during the trading phase, there are two phases in which your emotions are heightened. And it's either going to be during the trade execution phase, which is causing you to pull the trigger or hesitating to pull the trigger, or maybe impulsively pulling the trigger. Then you need to track what phase of the trade life cycle that was. Was it execution, or was it the trade management phase? When you were in the trade, did you puke your position? Did you cut it too early? Were you hesitating? Were you suffering from greed or significant drawdown that you were waiting for hope to get back out at break even? So how I've done this is use this sheet to track your emotions and behaviors throughout a trade. Over time, look for patterns and adjust your approach accordingly. So this is what's going to help you become self-aware. Now, for every trade that you take, you need to have this printed out in front of you to write your thoughts and feelings during the trade life cycle that we discussed in the earlier video today. So when you go from that being to production phase, when you go to that performance phase, this is what that sheet is for. So capture the trade ID, the date, the instrument, and where you think you are in your mental game. Were you in your A game when you approach the desk? Were you in your B game? Or were you more in your C game where you're scared, you're hesitant, you're afraid of losses, you're looking at your P&L? Or did you approach the desk with confidence? You know what your plan is. You feel relaxed. You feel in tune with the market. You're psychologically ready. Okay? And then when those emotions surface, so if you remember the Yerkes-Dodson model, emotional arousal, when you start being self-aware and you see those emotions creeping in, prices coming into your level, it's coming in at some serious pace, you had planned to take the trade, what are those emotions that are coming in? Is it level of greed because you're oversizing on that position? What's your so what's the emotion tag? Is it fear? Is it greed? Is it impulsiveness? And then what is the actual emotion? Or tell yourself more about that. For example, I'm experiencing a level of fear because I really want to trade this, but I'm putting on too much size. Or I'm scared of trading this because I've just experienced some losses in the last 2-3 trades. Well, that's telling you implicitly that you're not letting go. So it's important that you track that here during that emotion. And then the trigger, what's causing that? What's causing that to trigger? Is it because of the past? What was it about the past? Is it because you suffered a set of losses? And then your thoughts during that period. And then what's your physical behavior? Are you tapping the desk? Are you biting your nails? Are you stomping your feet? Are you fidgeting in your chair? What is the physical response because of that heightened emotion? And then what was your response behavior? What did you actually do? Did you pull the trigger in hesitation? Were you impatient? Did you freeze? And then you pulled the trigger after price had pushed away from the level that you intended to do business at? And then the mistakes and the lessons learned after the trade. And then additional notes and observation. So one thing I would really, really recommend you to do is start screen recording during the trade execution phase or trade management phase and keep talking through the microphone. Keep talking through each and every emotion that you feel. So I'm in a trade. I've just executed a trade on Bitcoin. I've shorted this level and I feel like cutting it because price has pushed away from a level. I really don't want to take this loss. I might cut it if it comes back against me. But really, I hope it goes that way or this way. Record and talk to yourself. Then at the end of the day, when your emotions have dropped, review how you performed for that trade session. If you took a trade, or maybe you've missed trades. Why did you miss those trades? So again, if you were hesitating, you're not pulling the trigger, talk to yourself in the microphone. Talk yourself through the trade. Record that, journal that, reflect upon this using this. And then the second sheet is the mental mindset development sheet. Once you have collected this over a good few set of trades, you'll see a level of frequent occurrences of the underlying mental and emotional problems. And this is where this sheet comes into play, because now you're trying to identify the emotional issue, provide a detailed description of the problem or emotional reaction that keeps affecting your decision making during the trade. Explain why you think, feel, or react the way you do in this situation. Now you're reflecting. So this sheet here is about capturing the emotions during the trade. This sheet here is about reflecting and journaling after the trade. Once you're letting go, what you experience. Challenge your issue. Why are you having these issues? Why is your emotional reaction flawed? And then what's your plan to improve? Things that you need to think about. And number 5, what's the expected outcome and future approach? All right, so that's it for today's video. So I will make these 2 resources available from Monday the 7th of April. And you should all have access to this. I'll provide a link in a post next week, which will give you access to these documents and a couple of others that I'd like to cover. But we'll talk about that during the routine and goal setting video. So these 2 sheets will continue on into our routine and goal setting. So this isn't the only time I'm going to talk about this. This will be a part of our process moving forward. And you will see how over the coming weeks, we're going to have a really well detailed document that's going to give us a structure, a process, a trade routine, pre-trade, post-trade, and so forth. So in terms of progress, we've just completed the mindset and psychology segment of the course. Now, the routine and goal setting, as well as risk management, will be out early next week. Thereafter, we'll take a 1-week break from the date that the risk management video is posted. So the tasks for you to complete, which is part of the trading and psychology segment. Now, in part number 1 or video number 1 of the trading psychology segment, I asked you to work through this. You should have completed this by now, and if you haven't, then please do go ahead and do so. In part 2 and 3 combined, I want you to understand what expectancy is, why it is important, what it means to have a low win rate with good positive expectancy. Then number 2, what does it mean to be objective, embracing uncertainty, and embracing randomness? Every day you come to the desk, these are 3 key aspects of trading that you should be aware of when you approach the markets. And then number 3, map out your mental and tactical game from A to C, starting with just 5 of each per segment. So I don't want you to overwhelm yourself. I've given you plenty of examples, and I've provided it's not an exhaustive list, but it gives you, those are some of the items that you need to include in your grid. Then moving on to understand and explain each of the performance process cycle, and really give some thought about how this could potentially or might form part of your trading mental framework for the foreseeable future. And then once you've done that, explain why letting go, or the letting go phase, is very important, and the impact of failure to let go that a trader's death spiral can have upon your trading. Number 6, continue with the trading manual document, working on the mental game aspects of incorporating all of the above. So once you've worked through these exercises, include that as part of your trading manual. And then number 7, the emotional tracking sheets will be available from Monday the 7th of April. Ensure you copy these and include them in your trading manual. All right, so that's it. That's the end of the second segment, which is trading and psychology. It's probably going to be one of the most longest parts of this mentorship, but hopefully it's one that's going to give you a great foundation with the future and success of your trading. Catch you on the next one.